Howdy all, welcome on into Goose Talks Film. I'm Goose, and for this week's new release film, we are tackling The Zone of Interest. It is a new release film. I think it's just finished its cinematic run in theatres, and it's currently available to buy and rent pretty much anywhere you get your digital media. I'm not sure roughly when it'll drop on streaming services, as in like included with them, like on Netflix, etc. I would guess probably middle to end of the year, depending on how sales go. Usually if the sales trend for a few months, they hold it off as much as they can. Sometimes they rush it to put eyes on the product. So this movie tells the story of Auschwitz commandant Rudolf Höss and his wife Hedwig strive to build a dream life for their family in a house and garden beside the camp. So it's a pretty... it seems like it's a pretty, not so much dull, but very limited synopsis. That's essentially, without even giving anything away, that's essentially what this movie is. Don't expect this to be a similar film to that of The Pianist or Schindler's List. It isn't those realms of war movies. It doesn't feature war or anything like that. You know, it's not like a Saving Private Ryan or anything like that, or a Platoon. It focuses on kind of the things behind the scenes of war, and obviously this focuses on the concentration camp of Auschwitz. Now I'll start off by saying this. It deals with a lot of messed up stuff, like obviously the real life atrocities that I think it was millions of poor Jewish people went through. And that's just, that's in terms of these concentration camps. Obviously there's a lot of other horrors going on outside of that. And yeah, if you're a bit touchy with these type of stuff or anything that deals with this, I would recommend to not watch this. It doesn't, without giving anything away, it doesn't show you a lot of stuff at all. But it insinuates a lot and leaves a lot to the imagination, but it's still enough. And you hear a lot of things go on. Now, this is nominated for 5 Oscars, which are taking place in a few weeks, and I'll be obviously doing my predictions and preview and obviously my review for that as well. Probably, I think, 3 weeks until the Oscars are on, but yes, this is done quite well in the lead up to the Oscars. It is foreign language, so it's in German, so it is subtitled, but it is actually a British film, so it's made by pretty much the producers and writers and director are all British. Obviously, they used a lot of, I think, Polish crew as well as German crew, with a few Brits in there as well. And majority of the actors are German as well. Great cast. A lot I hadn't seen before. Only Christian Friday, which I had seen, is in, I think it's Babylon Berlin or Berlin Babylon on Netflix. I had seen that advertising. He did look slightly familiar. Yeah, so this recently at the BAFTAs, which is one of the biggest award shows leading up to the Oscars, it won Best Foreign Language Film and Best British Film, which is a rare double award, obviously, because majority of the time a foreign language film is made outside of United Kingdom. And different award shows have different guidelines for their foreign films. Sometimes it has to be foreign-made film, sometimes just foreign language. And it's the same as Past Lives is a big foreign language movie. Please forgive me, I haven't watched the movie yet. Hopefully I watch it before the Oscars, but it's in Japanese or Korean, but it's actually entirely made by Americans in America. So yeah, anyway, this is a big chance to win at least a couple of awards at the Oscars. It's nominated for Best Film. It is nominated for Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Sound, and then I'm pretty sure it did sneak in for Best International Feature Film, and that is because it's United Kingdom and not United States. So it still meets the guidelines. It's not, foreign language. It can be, made in America, whatever. It has to be international feature film, and it's obviously made in the United Kingdom, so that's kind of how they go around it. So it's got the 5 awards. I definitely see it winning Best International Feature Film. It's definitely the favourite in that category. There are some good ones like Society of the Snow and whatnot. Best sound is a chance. Unfortunately, it's not a chance for best motion picture. Don't think Johnathan Glazer is going to win for best director, but adapted screenplay, there are a chance. The screenplay categories are always kind of be open. But anyway, I'll leave all my predictions to that podcast. So I have nothing to talk about. So before we get into the spoiler category, I usually do my ratings of would I recommend this? Do I say go see some movies, wait until streaming, or don't bother at all? Obviously, this has already come and gone at the movie. It's got a limited release across theatres, as a lot of foreign language movies do here in Australia. Unless they're a big, big movie, they don't really get a major release. I don't think I would have recommended to see this at the movies only for the fact that you probably feel more comfortable watching this in your house. You can just pause it or turn it off if it gets a bit too much. Whereas at the movies, you're kind of like, oh, do I walk out? Do I lose the money I just spent? Or blah, blah, blah. I would recommend to pay the money to rent this on digital. So I'm not saying, wait 4 to 6 months for it to be included on streaming like Netflix and Amazon Prime and whatnot. I would still, I would say spend some money to rent this. Maybe don't buy it, unless you really like it and you want it in your library. But to begin with, definitely rent it. I don't think it's that expensive to rent. I don't think it's one of those ridiculous new releases that costs like, $15-20 to rent. If that is the case, it is that much. I don't think it is, but wait until it kind of comes down in a few weeks, a month, I would say. So I pretty much, there's not heaps to talk about, but I'll get into that when I hit the spoiler zone. Look, if you do like movies like The Pianist and Schindler's List, because they deal with a lot of, full-on confronting stuff as well. If you could deal with them, you could probably deal with this as well. If you couldn't deal with those movies, then this is the same boat as them. This unfortunately isn't for you. It's a good learning movie, really, to see just how just messed up some people can be. And just, everyone knows the Nazis are messed up, and this kind of delves deep into the, different things. That's all I pretty much can say about this without the spoilers. So here's a warning. This is the spoiler territory, and I'm going to dive into the zone of interest into more detail. All right, so I will read the plot synopsis for this because it's not that long, but it's still longish, so bear with me. In 1943, Rudolf Höss, commandant of the Auschwitz concentration camp, lives with his wife Hedwig and their 5 children in an idyllic home next to the camp. Höss takes the children out to swim and fish, and Hedwig spends time tending to the garden. Servants handle chores, and the prisoners' belongings are given to the family. Beyond the garden wall, gunshots, shouting, and sounds of trains and furnaces are audible. Höss approves the design of a new crematorium which soon becomes operational. Höss notices human remains in the river. He gets his children out of the water and sends a note to camp personnel chastising them for their carelessness. It is implied that he has sexual relations with prisoners in his office. Meanwhile, a Polish girl who lives nearby sneaks out every night hiding food at the prisoners' work sites for them to find and eat. Höss receives word that he is being promoted to Deputy Inspector of all concentration camps and must relocate to Oranienburg near Berlin. He objects to no avail and withholds the news from Hedwig for several days. Hedwig, deeply attached to the home, begs him to convince his superiors to let her and the children remain. The request is approved, and Höss moves. Hedwig's mother comes to stay, but is horrified at the sight of the crematorium flames at night and departs, leaving behind a note that an irate Hedwig burns after reading. Months after arriving in Berlin, in recognition of his work, Höss is tasked with heading an operation named after him that would transport 700,000 Hungarian Jews to Auschwitz to be killed. This allows him to move back to Auschwitz and reunite with his family. He vacantly attends a party celebrating the operation and confesses to Hedwig over the phone that he spent his time there thinking about the most efficient way to gas the room. As Höss leaves his Berlin office, descending a stairway, he stops and retches repeatedly and stares into the darkness. In the present day, a group of janitors clean the Auschwitz-Birkenau State Museum. Back in 1943, Höss proceeds downstairs. Okay, so that pretty much summarizes the majority of the movie. This movie is really like hard to describe. If like, I don't want to call it boring. I guess I could call it mundane because that's actually what I was just reading before the podcast was that the director wanted it to be mundane. That was the point of the movie. And well, what I will say to just begin with is like the sound design in this is great. Like it's haunting and it does its job perfectly. Like it does make you feel squeamish and uncomfortable multiple times. And I think Glazer, the director, not showing pretty much anything. Like you don't even see inside the camp. You see outside of it. You see pretty much the chimneys, which is just a fucking haunting sight just by itself. Of just like the flames and stuff coming from the chamber chimneys. It's brutal stuff. And look, I don't think I'll ever see myself watching this again. Not that I think it's shit or that I didn't think it's good filmmaking, but it's really hard to say that I enjoyed it because it's one of those movies where it's, you know, like Schindler's List, like The Pianist, yeah, they're horrific tales and they show what was going on in those camps, but they also give us something to grasp onto that gives us a bit of hope. Like Adrian Brody, based on the real life person, no matter, you know, all the stuff he went through, he still survived and lived through all that. Same as Oskar Schindler, didn't get to save as many as he wanted to, but he still saved so many Jewish people's lives. This movie, you have nothing like that to hold on to. Nothing. Other than the fact of the little girl, the Jewish girl that sneaks out into the camps to leave food and stuff for the workers, which is based on a true person. We don't really get to see her or family much. We see a scene of them. And it doesn't really reveal much at all. And it's really weird. The way that her scenes are filmed, so about 2 or 3 different scenes of her. She gets maybe about 3 or 4 minutes of screen time. It's in kind of like infrared. I'm not quite, obviously there's a reason why he did that. I couldn't really think of a reason why. To differentiate, maybe I don't know. It's a bit of an odd choice. In terms of filmmaking and sound design and everything like that, this movie is really good in that sense. Like, if you want to watch this, like I could imagine this movie would be shown in English class, in filmmaking class at university and colleges, just because it is a really brilliantly made movie. In terms of how is it structured, its pacing, like I said, Glazer's point of the movie was, to be mundane, to show this mundane life of these people that, you know, we look at these people as evil, which they were, but they're all also humans and they lived day-to-day, pretty ordinary, boring lives. And that might sound silly, but that's leading to more towards the kids and the mum that rarely leave the house unless they're going, you know, to the river to swim and clean clothes, etc. Whereas obviously Höss, we see him enter the camp multiple times and come back, but we never obviously see inside the camp because Glazer didn't see a point to reenact any of that stuff. He wanted to pretty much show us things that we never saw. You know, the family just pretty much being a normal-ish family. Like, there's really like a subtle confronting scenes. One of the first ones done really subtly was, I thought it was really odd. And I'll get to the filming technique after because I guessed it and I was right, but we'll get to that. We see the slaves. Now, they're not, I assumed, and it was confirmed through dialogue later on that I was correct, that the servants aren't Jewish, or they aren't from the camp. They're local girls that are treated like absolute garbage. And there's one scene which this is a Jewish person is doing the you do see him do some of the gardening and the cleaning and all that, and he grabs Höss's shoes. And you see a few of these servants doing jobs, blah, 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 and you see him grab the shoes and he's about to clean them and it's cutting between different things. And you see him wash blood off the bottom of the boots. And you only see it for maybe 2-3 seconds. And it's like, wow, that's like fucked up. Like, and they don't bring any attention to it. No characters say anything. Like the poor Jewish person cleaning the shoes, you know, doesn't react as if it's normal, which it probably is for him to clean blood off the shoes. It's just fucked up. And obviously the point is to make us feel uncomfortable, and they did a really great job. They do that with multiple audios. Like you never see anything against the people inside the camp. You hear it. You hear gunshots a lot. You hear the chimneys go. You hear the screams, which is just like, that's why I don't think I could ever watch this movie again, because it does really make, it is showing us what really happened. Like, just absolute messed up stuff, sorry. And like I said, with other films like Schindler's List, they're depressing, and I have to be in the right mood to watch them, and they're not movies I watch a lot. They're movies where I watch, if I'm showing someone, hey, look, if you're into filmmaking, watch this, because there's a phenomenal movies in terms of filmmaking, but prepare yourself. And those movies, although they're so dramatic and so sad because they do touch on the atrocities that did take place, like I said earlier, there's still that small thing that we grab onto and think, there's a bit of hope in humanity. Like, people did help Adrian Brody's character survive and live. Oscar Schindler, although he thought that he'd failed so many people, a lot of those people wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for him. But this movie just has nothing like that. Like, nothing whatsoever. It's just continuous confronting stuff. And what I was talking about, the filmmaking technique, and I was right, and I did a bit of research after watching it. Inside the house, pretty much 90% of the time, they set up all these cameras, sometimes one camera per room, sometimes if it's the dining room or the kitchen, there was two separate cameras. They would just let them roll, and they would just tell the actors to just go. So they'd improvise something. They'd obviously follow a script, but the cameras were always rolling. So the characters, when they move upstairs and stuff, there's no cutting. Like, obviously cutting in the editing room, but no cameras are turned off. That's all done post-production, which I think is very interesting. And there's a lot of long shots and establishing shots, like lots and lots. You see the big sprawling garden. You see the big wall of Auschwitz that pretty much divides the camp and the house backyard, which is like really disturbing. There's a lot of really, really great shots in this movie. And just other confronting stuff, like early on in the movie, I think pretty much whilst the boys washing the blood off the boots, is Höss is sitting with, I think that it's never confirmed if they're engineers or if they're whatever they are. They're two guys in suits with all these plans of these new crematorium chambers, which they're just nonchalantly talking about it, how it's going to be quicker. I don't really want to, talk about that too much, because it's just really shit to think about. And just scenes like Höss is casually smoking by the pool, and I think it's done. He turns his back because he realizes I don't really want to watch that. He turns his back, and it's a big long shot. You see the back of like the chimney from the gas chambers, and he's turns his back and just continues smoking, and then just walks back inside. There's also a scene where Höss is seen at night going through the house, turning all the lights off, locking all the doors, making sure everything. So he's obviously paranoid. Like, he knows, obviously, that all the fucked up shit he's doing and that people are going to be after him, or if maybe some of the members of the camp escape, the house would be the first place they would go. So it shows that he's definitely aware of the dangers involved with all the fucked up shit that he's doing. So that was, those good scenes to establish characters, because there's not a shitload of dialogue in this movie. A lot of it's visual and audio, but not in terms of dialogue. Like I said, in screams, the chimneys, the dog barking. That's something I noticed about the dog, and I haven't done really any research, but I'm pretty sure I'm correct. Is the dog is always hyperactive, like it's always moving, it's always barking, it's always looked like it's distressed, and I think it's because it obviously hears everything going on, and it barks a lot at the fence. It's never, you'd rarely see it still, and I think that's Glazer showing us that the dog can hear everything 24/7 that's going on. The scene with the grandmother, how she wakes up in the middle of the night and then sees the chimney go off in the middle of the night and then realizes, and she grabs a tissue to pretty much, I don't know if she's wiping her tears or she's going to be sick, but she obviously leaves in the middle of the night because she can't handle it, because she finally understands and sees it firsthand what is actually going on. And, you know, there's scenes of the mother, played by Sandra Huller, and her friends just casually sitting around the table talking about, you know, trips and holidays and new clothes they're wearing, whereas you can hear stuff going in the background. Like, the chimneys are almost going 24/7. You hear that a lot. And that's showing us that these people are so... I don't know if mundane's the right word, but they're so, like, switched out of reality that what is happening next door to them while they casually drink their wine and their teas and their coffees and smoking their cigarettes by the pool, only meters away from the camp where all this stuff's going on. Like, it's just... And this stuff really happened. We know this stuff really happened, that the Nazis, in their heads, thought that they were doing what was right for them. But it's crazy stuff. And this movie really does, like, nail in the effect of showing us that these people were literally acting like a normal family. Like, they thought they were a normal family. And, like, the mum doesn't want to leave. Like, she cracks her shits when they want to leave because she loves it, and she is growing these vines to cover up the wall for the future because she knows that it takes years for the vines to get that high, and she's just covering it up. Like, they're just kind of pushing it to the side. Like, they want to live their normal life. Like, they don't care what's going on. It's just messed up shit. Yeah, and we see a scene of Höss sitting at his office desk at his house, counting all this money, and then it's, like, later shown from, like, a bird's eye view that it's all different currencies of money, like American. I think we see pounds, we do see German, Polish. Goes to show that that's obviously stolen money. That's showing us, he's getting paid by people. I'm not sure, but it's showing him that it's dodgy. There's scenes that he's sleeping. It's never revealed if they're prisoners or if they're locals, but he sleeps with other people and then washes himself up, blah, 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 so his wife doesn't know. They pretty much don't show affection to each other at all. They sleep in separate beds. We don't ever really see them hug or hold hands or kiss or anything like that. I think that was just showing us that they were kind of like a marriage of, I can't think of the word, convenience, I guess. And they, you know, that scene of Höss, he's fishing in the river and his kids are playing near the shoreline just, 50, 100 meters down from him. And something hits him in the leg and he picks up and it's a bone. And he looks behind him and you see this discolored water hit him and he freaks out and grabs his kids, and then he absolutely, like, chews out the officers for being, like, I can't think of the word, but telling the officers not to make sure that gets in the water and stuff. And that scene, I did honestly pause. It did kind of make me feel a bit sick to my stomach. That was just, like I said, this movie just does a really, really good job of showing us things and letting us listen and hear things throughout the movie and not getting told. Like, we're rarely told by the characters themselves what's happening. Like, we're shown it. And that scene's going to stick with me in a bad way. That scene is one of the reasons why I wouldn't recommend this to people that can't handle this type of thing, and fair enough to them. I don't know if I would watch this movie, one, if it wasn't part of award season. I try and watch as many of the award season movies as I can, pretty much 99% of them. The only reason why I don't watch them is because I can't get my hands on them. And obviously I'm intrigued by stories from World War One and World War Two. Other than that, I don't know if I would have watched this movie. And I kind of questioned if I would talk about this on the podcast, but I guess I'm going to talk about this for the Oscars predictions anyway, so I thought I might as well watch it, review it. If no one listens to this episode, I don't blame you, because that tells me that either you don't want to hear me talk in depth about this type of thing in this movie, or you're not wanting to watch and know anything about this movie. I don't blame you at all, honestly. Yeah, and like there's scenes like the mother, like she's just as cold as Höss. Like, just there's a scene like after the grandmother's left in the middle of the night, she's obviously very pissed off, and there was the food set aside for the grandmother, and she assumes the servants knew that she wasn't there, and she said, "Oh, what are you doing this just to spite me?" And so the servant girl grabs the food, takes it back, and then she comes back to grab the cutlery. and the wife goes something along the lines of, "Oh, I could get my husband to spread your ashes in the field," or something like that. Pretty much insinuating that she could get her gut. Like, oh, just far out. Like I said, we're not told a lot of stuff, and there's not heaps of dialogue. But when there is dialogue like that, it is just just chaos. It's so full on. Well, man, I struggle to really talk about it because it is really full on, and I guess I was really in tune to this because I was writing notes and I was trying to focus and notice things as much as I could, so I could obviously cover it on the podcast. And yeah, boy, way, and the ending with Höss retching and then cutting to present day while the cleaners clean the museum at Auschwitz, and it cuts back to him walking in the darkness, and then it ends. I did question it's a very odd ending. And then I thinking back, I'm like, oh, is it telling us that he thinks he's going to be this big hero, right? He's going to have this big legacy. He's going to be in the history books in Germany as a hero, doing all these atrocities to the Hungarians and whatnot, the millions of lives that he took from this earth. But in reality, he was found guilty of a shitload of things. Pretty much murder is, the main one, and war crimes. And, he was hanged, I think, 1947, so a couple of years after being caught, and he was hanged in Auschwitz. It's pretty much showing him walking to the darkness after them showing present day was that the only legacy he has is a legacy of a psychotic murderer, mass murderer, who is known to be one of the most evil people of all time, up there with Hitler himself. So I think that and I did get confirmation that was pretty much what Glazer's was trying to show us. It did take me a while to kind of wrap my head around the ending. I thought it was a bit odd. You don't see scenes like that of modern day in a movie like this that's set back in World War II. It was a very odd choice, but I think it kind of worked. After all, once I thought about it, I thought, this is what Glazer's showing me, right? I get you. Yeah, there's a few scenes we see of him on the phone and talking about pretty much gloating that he's Himmler's, one of Himmler's boys, and Himmler will look after him, blah, 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 which I think eventually does because he gets him back to Auschwitz where he wanted to be with his family to run Auschwitz. Yeah, I'm going to struggle to really do my normal full-length podcast on this just because I really don't want to dwell on everything too much on certain scenes and whatnot, and there's really not a crap ton to talk about, to be honest. It's very, there's no, they always say, every movie is start, middle, ending. You have your protagonist, you have your antagonist, you have your conflict, you have your resolution. There's nothing of that really in here. We're focusing on evil people. The only person that we can look to for some humanity is the little girl that leaves food for the people of the workers of Auschwitz. And that's about it. We see for 3 to 5 minutes. So yeah, it's very bleak. I can see, Matt, I know it has to be on the merits of the movie itself, in terms of the filmmaking, but I could maybe see this not winning Best Foreign Film for the fact that, one, people maybe don't want to watch a movie about a family that lives next door to Auschwitz, and two, people might not be able to watch it all and they don't really see themselves voting for a movie they couldn't finish because it's just too full on. I'm not saying that will be the case or is the case, but I think that's what I'll put it down to if it doesn't win. Because in terms of filmmaking stuff, this is a brilliant filmmaking movie. And don't get me wrong, it probably feels as though I'm being negative because of the subject matter. And that's I'm not being negative towards the filmmaking itself, because I'll touch on the ratings of the movie at the end of the podcast. But yeah, it's I struggle to use positive words for a movie like this. But there are some really breathtaking, beautiful shots, and I think I could confidently say that because there's not a lot of shots of Auschwitz itself, but I still don't feel right using those words for a movie like this. In terms of the directing, like, I mean, the acting is like incredibly good. Like, the acting is really, really good. A lot of it's done visually because, like I said, there's not heaps of dialogue. A lot of it's their body language, what they do, etc., etc. I'll just jump to the trivia now. Looks like there's a little bit of trivia, so I'll touch on that, and then we'll get into the closing and like my ratings of the movie. Like I said, it's gonna be quite a short episode. Just because one, the scenes that I can kind of delve into cover are just a bit full on. They don't really need to be delved into because they're pretty straightforward and pretty full on. Like, there's not really a lot of reading into. So we've got Sir Martin Amis, author of the source novel, died on May 19, 2023, the same day the film had its world premiere at the Cannes Film Festival. The sound of constant revving of an unseen motorcycle engine heard from a distance several times throughout the outdoor scenes is in fact from real life. The main character of the movie, Auschwitz Commander Rudolf Höss, hired a person just to rev the engine in order to overshadow the horror of screams and gunshots coming from the camp. Oh, wow. That's interesting. Micah Levy recorded a much longer score for the film, but Johnathan Glazer decided to do without music for most of the movie, and to instead rely on the sound design to depict the off-screen horrors occurring in Auschwitz. Yeah, that's something I will agree with. There's no... like, the lack of music definitely works for what they wanted to do with this movie, for sure. Director Johnathan Glazer used up to 5 fixed cameras in the house and garden with no visible crew to capture many scenes, so the actors didn't know if they were being shot in close-up or wide shot. They were totally immersed in the scene and enjoyed working in that realistic environment. That's why a lot of these long shots and establishing shots can last a bit longer, because they're just shooting them from a distance. They don't have to worry about other people being caught in the camera, blah, blah, blah. There's a lack of crew, so no one's going to be accidentally caught on film. I think that definitely worked. Mrs. Höss describes to her friends getting a coat from Canada while mocking another woman who thought she meant the sovereign country. Canada was in fact the name given in Auschwitz to the vast storehouse of goods confiscated from the prison. Confiscated from the prisoners. Okay, that little dialogue makes a bit more sense to me now, because that wasn't really touched on. The family dog in the film was played by Sandra Huller's pet dog. Oh, there you go. It was really her dog. Due to the unconventional multi-camera setup, Glazer and his team had over 800 hours of raw footage at the start of the editing process. That's what I mean. I could tell just by watching it that would have been a lot of cutting having to take place. Johnathan Glazer's screenplay is only loosely based on British author Sir Martin Amis's novel The Zone of Interest. Amis's provocative book is quite different in many ways, because it tells a fictitious love story plot from 3 perspectives by using an artificial, even comical language designed to alienate the reader. Amis also uses only fictitious names of his characters, even if the historical Höss family was obviously an inspiration. Oh, there you go. It's a bit odd. At a given time during filming, Johnathan Glazer had around 10 cameras set up, with Johnny Byrne using about 30 microphones to capture the actors without interference. That was my next thought, was I'm like, so all these long shots and all that do have a bit of dialogue. I'm like, wow, they have to amplify it, blah, 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 but that probably makes sense. A lot of them are probably hidden. Like, they're probably like little cameras that just picked up dialogue, I would say. Official submission of the United Kingdom for Best International Feature Film category for the Oscars. This is director Johnathan Glazer's first non-language film. Alexandra, the young Polish girl leaving apples for the starving prisoners, was 90 years old when she met Glazer and died shortly after. The bike the film uses and the dress the actress wears both belong to her. Wow, that's incredible. That's a nice touch. Wow, yeah. There you go. The youngest son banged on the drums, a satire reference to Günter Grass's novel adapted in the movie The Tin Drum. The prisoner named Joseph Wolf survived the camp and was one of the first people to document the atrocities of the Holocaust, a cause he dedicated his life to. Steven Spielberg called it the best Holocaust movie I've witnessed since my own. Well, I guess, like, I'm not discrediting what Spielberg said, but there hasn't been a lot of Holocaust movies since Schindler's List. But if you're putting The Pianist in there, in terms of movie or not, The Pianist is a much better movie than this. Don't get me wrong. I did like, in terms of filmmaking, I did like this movie. So pretty much, yeah, I'll jump into my final ratings for the movie. As we do here on Goose Talks Film, there's 4 categories that I rate out of 5, and that goes towards the total. And then the total goes towards my end of year review, which I'll be listing the top 10 best reviewed movies and the 10 least reviewed least reviewed movies. So pretty much that doesn't always, I've said before that doesn't always mean, this top 10 will be the top 10 that I would write if I was just to pick them. This is all just done in this way where, in like a less biased way, I think by the end of the year, once I've watched all these movies, these ratings are locked in from when I watched them now in February to the ones I've watched in July to the ones I've watched in October, etc., etc. I think it's just a fair way to do it. So, yeah, directing. Look, Glazer does a good job with the directing. I think a lot of the shots on that were really, really good. In terms of, I guess I don't know if it all comes down to him, but it obviously comes down to writing, but he was also co-writer on this, so I guess he's included in this, where a lot of mundaneness and stuff could have been made a bit more interesting, but then I guess, he did have a point of making it mundane on purpose. The directing, look, I've already touched on it a bit. I'll stick with a 3.5 out of 5 for directing. I think it's really well directed. I am so honestly surprised he's nominated for Best Director when there's quite a few directors that were snubbed. But hey, good for him. It is a well-directed movie, so I won't disagree with that at all. The writing, I would say 4 out of 5, because like I've said it many times on the podcast, there's not a crap ton of dialogue, but the dialogue that we are given is very, very good and paints a picture and it does its job. Like, there's not really just useless dialogue, which is really good when you have a movie like this. It doesn't use a lot of it, Okay, if you're going to have minimal dialogue, then you better hope that it's going to do something. It achieves really well. A lot of great character building, especially with the wife, just shows how turned off she is from it all. I think it shows us Höss, when he's retching at the end, it's showing us that I think his body deep down knows the fucked up shit that he's doing, where his brain isn't realizing that. So I think that, the writing, I'll go 4 out of 5. It's a very well-written movie. In terms of pacing, that's really hard to judge because that was their point. So I guess we'll stick with the 4. The acting was, really, really good. The acting from everyone, like the kids to the actors of Höss and Muller were really, really good. Some of the supporting actors, the grandmother, from being very happy with her daughter, sitting in the garden drinking wine, like literally sitting right next door to the wall and not really saying anything. And then she notices what's going on. It's a very, good performance from her. We don't really see her much, but it's an effective performance. So the acting will go 4 out of 5. The cinematography is definitely the highlight of this movie. I think because they were literally limited to one area, like they were limited to one side of Auschwitz, really, which was the house. We did see some shots of the field while Höss and his son rode their horses every day or every second day or whatever, and shots of the river, and that was pretty much about it. And we obviously saw scenes of Höss in the city walking down the street, and it's the same length of street that we see him walk down 2 or 3 times. And we see him in his little apartment and walking the flight of stairs a couple of times. That's pretty much about it. So it's very limited. But some of the long shots and the establishing shots and some of these, shots that last, you might think too long, but I think they do their job. Cinematography is great. I'm really shocked that this isn't nominated for Best Cinematography at the Oscars. Like, this, behind Best Foreign Film, this would be the one I would have picked to be nominated. But it is what it is. So cinematography, 4.5 out of 5. So that gives a total of 16, which, not to give away too much, but that is our highest reviewed movie so far. I think it's just beating out The Iron Claw. Pretty much that will bring the podcast to an end. Bit of a shorter podcast. We're still going to hit 40 minutes, just under. That's all good. I've said it before, the podcast will differentiate from 40, 45 minutes to anywhere at an hour and 10, hour and 15, depending on what I talk about. Especially once I have guest hosts on. Obviously, the podcast will be a lot longer because it's almost doubled when you have 2 people talking. Thanks for the support. No matter what you're listening on, if you're listening to this on my podcast provider Buzzsprout, or if you're listening to me on Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, thank you so much. I'm hoping to get this out to all the other programs that Apple Apple Music and Google Music or whatever it's called there. Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, whatever it's called. Just so I can, get more eyes and ears on the product. And if you like this, make sure you're following / subscribing on whatever platform you're watching / listening to me on. A lot of these podcasts go by like word of mouth and whatnot. So if you enjoy it, tell people that like movies to listen, because I love movies as well, and I'd love to build a community of people that love talking and listening all things movies. So that'll bring the podcast of the Zone of Interest to an end. And as always, guys, make sure you're watching those movies. I'll catch you later.